God of War, the series about a vitiligo-driven bald man going on a quest for vengeance against all the gods that wronged him. This series will include decapitation, ripping off heads, cutting off heads, pulling off heads. It contains it all. It is a giant, gory mess of destroying all the gods of Greek mythology. You cannot find gore so good, second to none other than finding it in possibly a bad Eli Roth movie, but I digress. Jokes aside, God of War 2018 is about to hit our doorstep. I remember the first reveal trailer of Kratos going on a snowy mountainside, tackling the new gods of Norse mythology. It seems that Kratos now, he's a bit more older, a bit more reserved, and he has something to look forward to, something to care about when it comes to the protection of his son, Arceus. It seems like there's going to be this interesting dynamic between Kratos and Arceus. Kratos, for his entire life, he was the general of an army. He was bred to be a fighter, a warrior. He has been known to kill so many gods in Greek mythology. So to see this experience of having a certified killer, reserve killer, interact with this child that knows nothing about this world, knows nothing about the gods, knows nothing about the Norse side, knows nothing about Kratos' history with the previous Greek gods, is going to create so many interesting dynamics in the world of kill or be killed. And he's trying to breed him, teach him the basics. I am thoroughly looking forward to the story after God of War 3. I honestly kind of wanted a damn explanation as to what happened in that crazy 15-minute epilogue where Kratos decided to say fuck this gay earth and stabbed himself with the blade of Olympus, and then we saw that little illusion of Athena turning possibly evil, and then we saw the mountainside where Kratos crawled his dead corpse somehow over the edge, and it wasn't explained. Was he dead? Did Athena claim his body? Maybe he lived from the fall off the cliff? But we were left with that resolution. We were left with that cliffhanger for years, until now we finally have this new game, God of War 2018. It seems to be changing everything. It is definitely a soft reboot. Different camera perspective, different combat, different weapons and abilities. I want to preface perfectly that change in itself is never a bad thing. I love change. I love when a series decides to say a formula is stale, a formula is old. It's time to move on what we perfected. It's time to move on from that and start anew. However, when it comes to trying new and innovative things that will change the landscape of a franchise forever, one must understand that when it comes to the basic roots of a franchise, the basic fundamentals, things in the gameplay department that are strange when it comes to change and alterations, then at that point, it seems like your game has regressed. I felt this way when I played Uncharted 3 going into Uncharted 4. I love the system of Uncharted 3. I love the fact that it was a very refined Uncharted 2. You could throw back grenades. Now with Uncharted 4, you can't throw back grenades, but you can get on the rope and swing all over the place. So they had something to compensate, but they still took away a mechanic that could have helped in Uncharted 4. When it comes to DMC Devil May Cry and comparing that to the rest of the games in the Devil May Cry series, particularly Devil May Cry 4, then the change is night and day. You will see things like, initially, I'm talking about launch DMC Devil May Cry, where the game was 30 FPS. The game was piss easy when you got certain weapons like Kablooey and Aquila. That game completely bastardized and destroyed Devil Trigger. Why are the enemies lingering in air? Why is it so hard to hit them and maintain my combo? What is this bullshit when games progress to be regressive and take away basic fundamentals and features, and it turns out to be rather terrible? We're not even in the halfway mark of this fucking article that was done by Game Informer about the recent God of War news, and I see people defending regression. Taking something out of a franchise and not doing anything to better it or put something in its place is never a good thing. And I have been a fan of God of War for a long time, and I can tell you this is becoming worrying. I will talk about the first issue of contention that I have with God of War 2018. Where the fuck is the release date? Where is it? If they are so confident in God of War, has this happened to any of the God of War games outside of this one where there's no release date at all? We know it's coming early 2018. Game Informer would have been the perfect platform to reveal it. Where is the goddamn release date? Now I know I might be nitpicky and impatient on this part, but that just doesn't scream confidence to me at all. There's also no jump button, so that means that Kratos cannot do follow-up combos in the air. So air combos are completely eliminated, eradicated from this new God of War game. Okay, so that really affects the combat. All that cool shit that you saw where Kratos jumped in the air in slow motion, followed an enemy, slammed him to the ground. No, you can't do that in this game. We also don't have possibly any platforming considering there's no jump button. So they said that scaling is going to be in this game. So you're going to be scaling walls, maybe auto jumping from platform to platform while you're scaling on something. Who knows how this could work, but how could they take out such a basic fundamental? I have no idea. Maybe Kratos is too fucking old. He's too old to fuck. He can't do sex minigames anymore, so he's too old to jump. Alright, I can see them taking out sex minigames. I never cared for sex minigames in the older God of War. This is me being fair, not being biased to the older God of War games. Kratos got in bed with some hoe. He pressed the circle button. XOXO into that pussy. And then you got some orbs, and that's it. It wasn't anything really engaging. The sex scenes were only there to show that Kratos was the epitome of being a man. He got to lay with some hot whore. He fucked her. He got points. You can upgrade your character. That's all there was to it. So I can see why they took out sex minigames, because that would be awkward, having sex in front of your son. I don't care what anyone says. That would be awkward as fuck to do that in front of your child. He might be like 5 or 6. I don't know how old Arceus is, but yeah, I can see why they removed the sex minigame from this new God of War, and I'm not really complaining about it too much because I think they wanted a serious tone, and if they're taking it serious, if they don't want those scenes to be awkward in front of your child, then I can see why it's taken out. Never really bugged me, never really an issue. However, when you take away traversal and combat elements, then it becomes a problem. Alright, so we got the terrible tally. No air combat, no jump button, no possible platforming outside of clambering on mountainsides. That really is lame. When it comes to the other new elements that they talked about in this new February article for God of War in Game Informer, I like some elements of it, don't get me wrong. The crafting system, very interesting. All God of War had in the past was you would sink all your points, all your orbs into upgrading your weapons into the max level. That's it. It wasn't anything too engaging. It was just make your weapon the most powerful as it could be so you can fuck shit up and do extra damage, and that's about it. Maybe with the new crafting system, it can open up a floodgate of possibilities. Maybe you can craft the weapon differently in one playthrough that you couldn't do in the next. Maybe there will be more than meets the eye when it comes to upgrading your weapons all the way with crafting. There's different runes in the game that changes your weapons from light attack to heavy attack. So that might be changing up the gameplay, changing up the variety a lot, and crafting might offer some of that possibility. If they make the possibilities endless and if it's fun, then I won't mind them replacing the last weapon upgrade system because it was just basic. Not only can you craft weapons, but you can craft armor and skills. That's going to be very interesting, especially for the latter, because what kind of skills can you craft with Kratos and make? Probably is going to be a skill tree at best. Just throwing that out there. But for the armor, maybe new clothing, new gear, new attire that has RPG elements to it, so maybe a certain piece of gear has more defense than the other one. That's really a good idea. However, when we get to no swimming, that's just super weird. God of War had very, very decent swimming levels. I mean, they looked fantastic. While I understand that there were some difficulty bumps with some of the traps underwater in the first God of War, you have to admire how it broke up some of the monotony of just slaying enemies. Sometimes you had traps to evade, sometimes you had to solve underwater puzzles. So them compensating for this boat segment where Kratos and Artemis are on a boat, the game has to make something interesting happen, otherwise it's just going to be just as useless. Will Kratos and Artemis be father and son bonding? Maybe this will bring out more exposition. Will the boat just be for travel? Will you be able to fast travel just in case you don't want to hear any of the dialogue? Options, 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 people. There was that freaky worm that wanted to help out Kratos, which Kratos was about to kill that thing, but his son said maybe he could help us. Will there be more enemies like that where you can battle in the boats and it makes for a climactic boss battle? I guess that's best left to the game to show me if their boat segments are worth a damn, if they are actually interesting or not. One thing that surprises me is that this God of War game is not going to be as chaotic in combat in the past, so it's about prioritizing enemies. Certain enemies are also resistant to Kratos' axe. It kind of reminds me of that stupid game Heavily Sword, where you could only attack certain enemies with a certain sword. DMC Devil May Cry by extension as well, which is really annoying. I really hate some tank enemy that you can only attack with a certain weapon because that kills free flow combat. I'm hoping that really doesn't become a problem in God of War. I'm sorry, I don't know any other way to sugarcoat this, but weapon Pacific enemies and color-coded enemies are a huge pain in the ass, especially in a hack and slash game. They do not deserve to exist in a hack and slash game. That's really my true thoughts on the matter. As opposed to the combos that they have for Artemis, that is a good thing, using Artemis in combos, because you just don't want a character that helps you out to become background noise. But there's a fine line here, because you don't want that character to also become annoying because you have to guard after them. I hated guarding after Sheva in Resident Evil 5, so maybe they could do it like Devil May Cry 3, where Virgil joins you, he has no health bar, he helps you out when you summon him, and that's about it. It's nothing really to babysit after, it's nothing really that's an inconvenience to the player, but it keeps you invested into using a side character when it's time to fight in combat, and then they back off or they have some little dialogue to keep it realistic. I would like something like that where I don't have to babysit after Artemis. He can take care of himself. He can do whatever I want when I need him in the heat of battle. And I think that's how the entire game, with this whole multiple character thing around a hack and slash, it should be coordinated in a way where I call on the person, they do their job, you can go and take a seat somewhere else after I'm done. Simple as that. Before this video goes on way too long, I just wanted to say my final two key points. I'll start off with the first one. The perception of this game, God of War 2018. I think people are going to say this is a great game, but the faults are it changed way too much for gameplay standards, and thus hardcore fans of the series might be turned off. I think this game, I have a gut feeling that because it is regressing and changing so much, that people are going to play this game and they are going to be like, why is Kratos so slow? Why are there only like 2 enemies on screen? Why are there only like these weird shield parries, and there's none of the cool grabs from the original series where you rip off a guy's head, you tear into his spleen? Where's all that cool stuff? I think that there's going to be something sacrificed when it comes to making a new God of War like this, and I think there's no going back from a gameplay perspective. There's not going to be any of those crazy 100 hit combos, those crazy chain air combos. I think all of that is going to be left in the past. A lot of people are picking up telltale signs saying that this game is going to have a more heavy narrative focus like The Last of Us did, because a lot of comparisons are coming from the fact that God of War is now in a third person perspective. So a lot of people are comparing God of War to The Last of Us. I think there will be a heavy narrative focus, unlike nothing we ever seen before for Kratos, because they already are humanizing this character. So I do think they changed that around for a reason, and we definitely might get more story over gameplay. That's what I think is going to happen. Will it be a bad thing? Maybe not, but to original God of War fans like me who enjoyed the gameplay a lot and the story a lot, and I wish that Sony Santa Monica could stick to improving the narrative and the gameplay without losing any focus or direction. God of War 1 had fun gameplay. God of War 1 had a fun, decent story. I think that sacrificing one over the other really takes a hit in quality somewhere. So I'm hoping that the gameplay, I'm hoping that the weapon variety, I'm hoping that the magic in God of War 2018 is really good. If it's not, if something is sacrificed, we're going to know, because I am a God of War fan. I'm going to know right off the bat if something is awry. The last point is just taking an observation. The new God of War seems to have just a little bit of dumbed down violence from the outside looking in. We get to chop in half tree monsters that look like Groot, but they bleed lava. We have in the ESRB ratings for the new God of War that the most violent scenes are a dragon getting its tongue slashed into, which is basically tame compared to the original God of War standards, compared to God of War 3 where we get to gut a titan. Then they have another violent scene where you rip off someone's jaw, and that's about it. We have a decapitation off screen. Now I know them having violence in a rated M game and still having some pretty gruesome stuff, nothing to nitpick about entirely there, but when it comes to using the violence in some context, using the violence to further the story and show that the gods and monsters in this world really mean business and it takes a lot to survive, I think that's thoroughly important. So having a decapitation off screen, it seems really weird when you think about that in context, considering the fact that God of War 3, you could pull off a fucking man's head in full view, carry it as a little lava lamp to light the caverns, and have no problem doing so, because that's how the violence was back then. It was pure, uncut brutality. I just think that's really odd and questionable, and I hope this game is not dumbed down to a T just because they want to take the story in a new direction. You can be mature and have violence. Hello, The Last of Us Part 2. Hello, you can be mature and tell a story behind what's going on with violent content. Anyway, my name is Renegade Operative. I am signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. I am a little bit concerned with how God of War 2018 will turn out. I really want this game to be good, but it sounds really regressive, and before people get on my case, just remember I have been playing this series since its initial conception, and I really enjoy the God of War games. I'm still buying this game, but I really just don't know what they're doing at this rate, and I really hope it turns out to be well, because every time I hear about this game, they always take something away, and that is completely worrying to me as a fan. I just hope that I'm proven wrong, and that the game will be absolutely amazing, but only time will tell. And please, for the love of God, put out the fucking release date. I really want to know when I can know when the game is coming out, and so far nothing. That is kind of disappointing for me. Early 2018. It's early 2018. I kind of want a release date. It sucks. Give it to me soon, Sony Santa Monica. If this game is a failure, then I believe that it's just going to really be disappointing as a fan of the God of War series, where some of them, excluding obviously God of War Ascension, that they were known for quality. They really were. A lot of people love those games. Even Ascension I think is kind of decent, but that's where the series dropped a little bit. God of War failing would just be something unprecedented. However, you have to go into games having set expectations. When you come out of the experience, that's when you can truly give your opinion. I'm just addressing my concerns and gripes so far. From now until release, I have no idea if the game is going to be a masterpiece or a dud, but one has to remember, this can happen. Sony might not produce all the greatest hits when it comes to exclusives. We thought the Order 1886 was going to be something to relish, something to really take into account of how great it could have been, and it was just squandered because it had a lot of quick time events, cutscenes, a lot of mechanics that just didn't work out to snuff. We have to keep an open mind, and once again, I cannot wait to play God of War 2018, but I do have some issues, and I hope they are ironed out in the final release. I will see you guys next time. Later.